Okay, I believe that the Hangout is live. Hello, everybody. This is Tim from Samwise 7 RPG, and
And I'm
today,
Darryl. Yep. And me, Darryl from Just Rolled Already.
there you go. Yeah, we were just. I think I was the one that brought it up. I think I saw you commenting on things like, "Yeah, we should talk sometime," and you're like, "Oh yeah, why not?" So here we are, everybody. You want to introduce yourself, Darryl? Anything that your channel or anything you're into these days?
Well, as I said before, I actually run a channel called Just Rolled Already. Everyone says that's a very condescending name, but that's just because it just happened to be something that came out of my mouth at a table one day when somebody wouldn't stop talking about their additives to their game. So I said Just Rolled Already, and that kind of stuck. And
Hey,
yep, it
that's
works.
that's cool. I mean, mine's just a jumble of letters and and numbers, and So I like. In hindsight, I kind of wish I would have done something more RPG related for my title, but whatever. This is my online moniker before I even got on YouTube, pretty much. So
Well, everyone knows you as Samwise 7, so that's how it goes.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I've been doing only the YouTube thing for a couple years, but kind of on and off again based on how I feel about it. And I probably should try a little bit harder to make more content. And the problem I always often find coming across is the motivation and will to do it, because sometimes I'll sit there and think like, okay, I got to record. The moment I put the record on the button, I completely blank and I have nothing to say.
I often have like two or three false starts before I actually get rolling on most videos. Like I have to like warm up to it. Kind of think of those like actors that make all kinds of noises and things before they go out on the stage. But eventually it sticks, and there's lots of ums and ahs in there, but I push through it.
For me, sometimes it's really funny. I'll be sitting there and I have like this one time I had made this perfect video, and right in the middle of it, this car just drove by with this loud engine and just overpowered my voice, and I couldn't hear anything. And it just me talk with my mouth moving, and then this blank look on my face, and I just had to stop it and do it all over again. And I just was so upset. But yeah, but yeah. So I have a question, Tim. When did you start doing this whole gaming thing? Did you start when you're like a kid, or were you kind of like fathered into it, or what?
I pretty much started out with my mother. She knew that I was into like Lord of the Rings, as my online name might suggest, and she bought me Black Box D&D, which came out in 1991. Had a big red dragon on the cover. Hero Quest, which I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with. Lots of cool figures, and the dungeon map that never changes, but you can alter which rooms and hallways or what. I think that was from Games Workshop or Milton Bradley, a combination of both, not really sure. And also Lord of the Rings adventure game, again, because of Tolkien. And after that, I got into Rollmaster for a long time. So maybe not your traditional RPG history, but yeah, that was pretty much how I got started. And me and my brother kind of took turns running games for the neighborhood kids. And it was kind of a spinning table of different players, whoever was in the neighborhood at the time, or whoever we could con to come over to our place to, oh yeah, try out these weird games, And most of them had a lot of fun. So yeah, we spent a lot of time making photocopies for Rollmaster back in those days. How about you? How'd you get started?
Actually, I started my freshman year in college back in like 2006, before 2007, like in somewhere like November, December. And what happened was one of my friends, he did like Magic the Gathering. I played Magic with him a lot because he had me a deck and we built one together. And so he said, like, you like a lot of fantasy stuff, and you do all these like really cool stories that you write, and you often do these funny what if things. What would you do? Do you want to try this like Dungeons and Dragons or something? And I'm like, I guess, but I'm not too comfortable with it because I just didn't know anything about it. And then he ran like a small game for me, and I thought this is actually kind of fun. And then he said, why don't you find and come over and the shop nearby and meet my group? And I was like, okay. So I go in there and I see like a bunch of interesting things I've never seen before, like all these crazy books and the dice. I didn't even know there was anything besides a D6 in the world until now, or till then. And just these weird things everywhere to me at this time was foreign, but now to me it's just very common for me to see. And the guy that I met was the shop owner's kid, or technically son, and he described the setting for World of Darkness, but the way he was describing it felt like he believed most of it. So I kind of was walking away and a little bit and kind of weirded out, but I stuck in there, and I met the rest of the players, and I played Werewolf the Apocalypse first, followed by Dungeons and Dragons, and then I kind of just stuck with those two on and off for a while, and then I just finally branched out and started doing like Pathfinder, Fifth Ed, Shadow of a Stern, Chin the Warring States. I have a very big plethora of various games and genres, and been here and there as far as gaming styles and gaming groups and stories of horror on my my channel. And
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Yeah, yes, I do. That was like it before I even started doing videos. It was just straight audio podcast style, and yeah, that was seems to be like the most of the things that I ended up doing, and it got really weird at one point because some groups I've been in and others I wasn't too fond of. I kind of joined some groups, left some groups, and it was just a few spots of a few dark spots in my gaming career over the years.
Yeah, I think that's with anybody. You know, there's different groups. You basically just have to kind of try them out. It's like, oh, let's try this group, or let's try to form a group. And oh man, sometimes it feels like you're scraping the bottom of the barrel, and other times it's like a flood. You know, you're like, oh, sorry, man, we already have like 7 players. Like even that's like a lot if everybody shows up. You know, over the years I've it probably sounds kind of weird, but like I used to like go through like local forums, like gaming forums, like in Pittsburgh. Like, hey man, I noticed on your profile it said you're like in Greensburg, PA, and that's like 10 minutes from me. You want to try to play a game sometime, you know? And that's back before like player databases and things. I don't even know what people do now. I've been out of the loop as far. I guess like meetup groups and I guess social networking. I'm sure there's a lot of that, like local. There's got to be local like meetup groups like on Facebook or something, but I haven't really looked because I don't have a lot of free time these days with my kids. But like gaming clubs, or I belong to one of those. I go to local conventions, so I bump into a lot of people that way. So that's how I find players and stuff these days. Whenever I get a chance to actually run something or play something.
Yeah, I've been doing I've been struggling to try to do in the gaming recently because a lot of my good gamers have disappeared, and I live in an area that doesn't have the greatest gamer population ever, and it totally sucks. So sometimes remote play is the only thing I can do, but there's so many distractions, and I've done a few games here and there. I think a couple weeks ago, actually, I played a little bit of the Rise of Tiamat for Fifth Ed, and it was fun. It's just all of a sudden everyone was busy and then disappeared, and then the guy who was running it has a tendency to run things hiatus for a while. Actually, coincidentally enough, it's John from who did videos of me for a little while, and he runs a lot of games, and me and him as far as friend-wise, we are very correlative, but when it comes down to gaming, we're almost adversarial when it comes down to it, because he's all about the rules. I'm all about story and freeform and having fun, and his fun is number crunching, and my fun is creative building. And it's interesting what you can come up with when you're doing all these weird hangouts and meetups, and sometimes you get those alpha type people that are dominating a game and you can't get a word in edgewise, and when they say like, okay, your turn, what do you do? And the moment I open my mouth, like the person suddenly like overpowers me and says, you should do this with that, and so on and so on. And I'm like, okay, it's just like at a table, I think I probably would have hit you with a book already.
So this is an online game, I'm guessing, and yeah, it's interesting. I'm running a game right now of A Song of Ice and Fire. It's play by post, but even in that, there's a little bit of like player style clashing, and you find yourself as the GM. I'm the GM. We're trying to like talk to everyone and like, well, you tried to do this and that. Let's try to do it a little bit differently. Let's try to work out some sort of compromise. And like you're saying with your friend, I've had different players that are into different things. There's rules lawyers, setting lawyers, different types of players, and you just kind of like every group you just want to look at, like kind of step back a few steps, like, okay, how can this player play with this guy and not kill each other? at the table. Like, how can I work something out? And normally I'm pretty good about that. Like, I'll try to tell one guy, like, you know how you do this? Well, that's the one thing that pushes this other guy's button. So try not to do that as much. And, oh, I know that other guy does this that pisses you off. I'll try to tell him not to do that as much. It's sort of a give and take, I found. I know with the danger, I don't know if danger is the right word, but with online groups, it's easier to pick and choose sometimes. Like, I don't know if you do this, but I just try to find people like bloggers or vloggers, people that I have some sort of not really relationship with, but I've interacted with them online before, so I kind of know what they're like, what their interests are, maybe a little bit what their style is, and you can kind of say, okay, this guy, and this guy, I bet you they would play cool together. And normally I'm right, but every once in a while, it sometimes it just feels like you're rolling dice. Like, let's see how this group gets along. Oh, all ones. Crap. I thought that'd be better than that.
Yeah, you got to build a rapport with some people online. Some of the people that I've met through online play, I kind of find it has a lot more misses than hits for me. Mostly because I don't know. I find the weirdest people. I did meet a couple people that were pretty cool, but the problem was is they wanted to be players and they wanted me to be the game master permanently, and I'm used to being the game master. I'm used to doing all these things. And most of the time I'm going to say, hey, let's play, look at my shelf, which is right up here, Eclipse Phase. And they're like, oh, well, I don't know the rules, but if you run it, we'll play it. I'm like, oh, I want to play it, though. Nobody wants to run this game.
Yeah, that's the endless GM syndrome. Yeah, I've been there a lot of times. I've even told myself, you know what? I'm just going to be a player for a while. Just not, when people ask me to run something, like, I'm just going to take it easy. And invariably, I give in. or I wake up one morning like, oh, man, I have this awesome idea for, X game that's on my shelf that has 4 inches of dust on it. I don't care if I'm going to run it or not. Like, I just need to interact with this game in some fashion, whether it's play-by-post game or if I take it to my local gaming club or if I just run it once a year at my local convention. That's a different thing too. Like trying to run a public game for whoever signs up for your system, of choice. So yeah, online gaming's tough. Convention gaming can be tough, but I think it's taught me to be flexible. I don't know if you found that. Do you find yourself regretting running these games sometimes? That you set up? It sounds like you've had more ill luck than good.
Well, when it comes down to, all right, I have a friend named Kyle, and he thinks I am the god of game masters, or at least the patron saint of it, because he likes to shoot me ideas and he asks me questions all the time. But on top of that, he has been in my epics, and he enjoys them so much that he has so much fun with them. And I look at it now and I say, well, thanks for making me actually feel good about my skills and so on. And the best way I can probably say is that I have had a lot of good games as well as bad ones. Probably more good than bad, but most of the time I look at I want to see it from the player's point of view rather than the game master's. And being shoehorned as almost a permanent game master, I've gotten used to that role, and it's been fun. I often have when I'm disgruntled enough and they put me into a game and they're wanting one of my overviewing games that just are fun, I give them such a setting that they wonder why did they actually agree to play.
Do you tend to like dark gritty settings? I'm a fan of I'm running a Warhammer 2nd edition game right now. I've run Midnight a lot of times in the past. I've run a lot of World of Darkness, that kind of stuff. So people kind of know that if they're playing one of my games, even if it's not a really dark setting, let's say it's a vanilla fantasy setting, there's going to be moments when it just gets dark or gets creepy, or that they kind of wonder oh man, maybe I shouldn't have signed up for this game, Jim. Can you dial it back a notch? So I've kind of learned that I'm like that, as a GM. I tend to be.
For me, I do horror a little bit too well. I don't have a dark personality, but when it comes down to it, I've talked about it on my channel once about a setting I one time ran for people because they wanted to see how dark I could really be. and I made my game of Pestilence about the world that's like a post-apocalyptic, that the rich oppress the poor, people who are always on the fear of being persecuted for having the disease and so on, and that death is around every corner, and that if you do worst enough, you could be exiled or forced to work a job that you don't want to work. And adventurers are technically what you would call the people who are kicked out of the city to go bring bottle. They'll risk their lives for scraps of food and mouthful of water and all these things. And they're going through, and I'm describing certain scenes, and like people getting, like, who are being burned alive on the street corner for, they say that they're cleansing the city. Well, really what they're doing is showing that they're in power and that they're using this to their advantage and exploiting everybody. And when I when I killed a child, like this 8-year-old boy being set ablaze, covered in alchemist fire, they all were like, everyone just looked at me and they're like, "What is wrong with you?" And I smiled at them and I
They gave
said,
you like the timeout, right?
"Yeah,
That's it. Like, they hold up the X card. That's enough. Please stop.
no." They just, the look on their faces was just like, and they couldn't believe that I actually went that far to say, to show a child being burned to death. And they're like, "Oh, but you love children." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I love kids, but you guys want it dark and gritty. Well, dark and gritty as you get it." And then
Yeah.
also sometimes I run games in a comical fashion. One game that I ran because people were saying like, "Oh, well, why don't you run a game?" and so on and so on and so on. I'm like, I don't want to, but okay, fine. And I was trying to make it, and I finally decided to make a game, and I ran it for a little while online, called Turnipshire, and it was about this like small out of nowhere town, a village of about like maybe 50 people at most. It's mostly a farmland that grew nothing but turnips, and their job was to defend it as level 1 adventurers. And the first major adventure they had to do was the election year, and they had to defend the field that each candidate who wanted to become the mayor of the town had to plant a turnip, and whoever grew the biggest turnip was the next mayor.
That sounds pretty comical. Like the only really comical game I think I've run is a reverse dungeon where everybody got to play kobolds and goblins, and they had very minor tasks and chores to do within the dungeon. And those pesky adventurers, the NPCs would show up and like butcher half of them. And I remember having like a stack of character sheets. I think I had like 50 of them. We got like halfway through the pile, and just I think also, what? Here's another thing too. I don't really try to run like a comical game, but a lot of times I find humor in like awful things happening, especially to my characters, like when I'm playing them, and like people are like wondering, like, why are you laughing? It's like, because that's hilarious. It's like that's the most awful thing that probably could have happened to them. And for whatever reason, I have like a demented sort of morbid sense of humor. That's probably why I like games like Lamentations of the Flame Princess and like Warhammer to a limited degree. I'm still trying to learn Warhammer, but I'm sort of learning by playing. So I don't know if I really try to go for humorous, but sometimes those moments come out where like people are crying. Like I remember running a convention game. It was called Weird Pittsburgh, where the aliens came down and like encapsulated downtown Pittsburgh in this globe of energy, and then they just like took it up into space. And they just like it's like a giant ice cream scoop, and they just took out like the Three Rivers area and took it up into space. And, there was all kinds of weird mutations, and UPS drivers were out to get humanity. It was really bizarre and weird, and I just remember people like crying, but they were laughing, like like barrel chuckle laughing. And I don't know about you, but I really enjoy when I can make players laugh and just have like a good time at the table. Were players laughing with the turnip game that you ran?
Oh, they were laughing all the time, especially when I said like you see this vendor selling something called a pineapple, and they thought it was like our world pineapple, the sweet fruit that everyone likes to eat. And then I describe them, and they pick them up, and they're brown, and they look at them and said, "It's literally these apples that grow on a pine tree, and they're cut. They look like a pine cone, but inside is like this woody, sappy tasting fruit with a barky outside." And So everyone's looking at me. I was like, really? A pineapple? You really do a bunch of funny puns in your game, don't you? And then in one game that I was running along, and I decided to kind of see if anybody would catch on to it. There was a port that I actually ran, and it was called Portmanteau, and referring towards the combination of the word portmanteau, which is the combination of two words put together. For example, when people say like, I don't know, rather going east and west, you're going swest.
Oh, I see.
And they didn't quite get it at first. And then when I started describing the street names, they're like wondering like, what is all of these weird? And they realized what I said, and they're like, oh, great. I get it now. Portmanteau. Great. You're really funny, man. It's one of those eye roll moments that just were for my personal amusement, not theirs. And it's been fun, but sometimes when I run a game, things get out of hand or they change on the fly to something that doesn't quite fit the vision I had in the beginning. Like, for example, my most successful game that I ever ran with my friends and my wife, and everyone talks about it to this day. And it's been years and years since it happened. It was known as the Darryl campaign, as this kind of overall, people were supposed to be like vampire hunter kind of thing, and they were supposed to be like a small group, but then they eventually kind of stole the game away to become like this kingdom building, overthrow the evil empire with this vast army kind of thing. And I originally was making it like, oh, these small little things that you guys do, you're kind of like the exterminators. Instead, they end up being like Attila the Hun killing vampires.
Sometimes that can, it's interesting. Like, I don't know if you got frustrated with that or not, but like I'm not really like a long-term, like overarching plot kind of GM. I'm more of like, let's throw a bunch of stuff at the players, see what they find interesting, and see where it takes us. And I think I learned to be that way, because in the past I did try to have some of those long-term plots, or I think we all as GMs have done like the chosen one, like thing for one player's character, and then they just stop coming to the group. It's like so I learned pretty early on not to focus that much energy and effort on like one character, or don't have like the Buffy the Vampire Slayer with the most flaky player on the earth. Don't do that. So no. Well, so in that campaign, so you had it set up like low level kind of stuff, and it got kind of epic. Was it harder for you, like to try to plot things out at that point? Like, oh, that's not what I had in mind at all, but okay, let's work on this.
It was a Pathfinder game that started at level 5, and it started getting really, really bizarre because everyone was given like I don't really believe in completely yoking the entire party. I like to put out a game and let the party decide what direction they go. And there's a map that I had, and I just drew it up with my wife, and she's good at drawing, and she did the mountains and stuff, and I just did like basic outlines and names and so on. But this thing survived the entire campaign, and at first it was like a clean and pristine, and next thing you know, there are pennings and markings and everything, and I let the party mess with that. But everyone started level 5. They all had a magical item of their choice. We had a fighter, gunslinger, magus, rogue, another fighter, and so on. And I found that letting them choose and have their powers and everything, they were having more fun, because one of them decided to be a werewolf. And if he's in chat right now, Kyle, I hate you so very much because of that. And his name was Marcus. The character's name was Marcus, and he was like the most entertaining, like gruff kind of character you could meet. And there was a guy that like was a necessary evil that was an NPC named Kalen. I don't remember his last name, and everyone just loved to hate him, and they kept around like, man, this guy's such a bastard, but I love him because he's a bastard. And they're all waiting for the reason to kill him. And my wife was playing in the game, and she was playing a gunslinger and all these things. And let's see, just these bizarre things that kept on happening. And there was like a part that was completely ad-libbed. I had no plan for it. I usually would plan like a week ahead, and it was very interesting to see how it happened because one NPC that was a love interest of another NPC of a player character, which was my wife's character, but got into a duel with the Kalen guy, and he died in the fight. But the main NPC also got mortally wounded, and then the next thing I know, Kyle's character Marcus went on a blood hunt because he wanted to be the one to end him, and so on. And then my wife fought him, and they got this crazy tense duel and bout, and he ran away licking his wounds. And the next part was like I had to stop the game at that point, and it just left this cliffhanger. And I remember walking around wondering, God, what am I going to do? This is going to be like, this is intense. This is going to be hard to deal with. And I just sat down, and I for the whole week I was inside my head figuring what's going to happen. Is this going to ruin my game? But no, it actually, what I did is I ended up throwing it back in the players' hands, and they resolved it themselves, and it became a great, amazing game. And I could not even come up with something like that. And they made a resolution. I can't quite describe how they did it, other than they in game it was like a couple weeks of reflecting and damage control amongst themselves, and it was I can't I'm trying to describe it, but it's hard to. All I have to say is that at a point I just let things out of my hand and into theirs, and they're the ones who really were the stars of the show, not me. And I think all the time great games are made by great players, not great game masters.
There's two things that you said that really stuck up, like kind of struck me when you were talking about that. One, it's the map. So I'm going to talk about that first. How the map has, just like a base outline. It's almost kind of fuzzy, around the edges. And as the campaign goes on, there's little GM notes and, this thing that I never thought was going to be in the campaign is here. And, I love to see organic, like GM prep notes like that. Like, oh wow, like look at the way he scratched this here, and oh, he scratched that out and added this thing over top of it. Or sometimes you see like white out. And I love seeing like just a big messy pile of GM prep. Like this was the plan, and then this is the crap that the players did to it, and this is awesome. Like, because it just goes in these strange, bizarre, like weird, and like you're saying, sometimes awesome. Just encounters that you probably could have never done by yourself. It's that input from you and bouncing off ideas of theirs, and the sum of the whole is greater than the parts. I love moments like that. And the second part is that you trusted your players. You, like you said, you kind of thought about it all week. Like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? How am I gonna do this differently, or how am I gonna try to weave this together? And you're like, you know what? Let's just let it hang out there. I'm just gonna throw it up like in a volleyball and just see who hits it next. And that's cool. I liked hearing about that.
Yeah, but the funny thing about like what you said about the paper, most of the pennings and most of the drawings on there actually weren't done by me. They were done by everybody else.
Oh wow! So it was like a group map, basically. Like they were kind of keeping tabs on things as the campaign progressed.
Yeah, I thought about putting it, like framing it up and putting it on my wall, but then people would have a question about something that's been covered by like water damage, guacamole, salsa, and cat puke. So it's like I have it, and I'm just sitting there, and I look at it sometimes, and I'm like, oh yeah, I love this thing. This is like a lot of good memories. Like this is the time that Rudy was eating chips and salsa next to it, and he pointed with his chip finger, and a glob of it fell right on top of where the enemy army was supposed to be. And so we kind of was like, okay, yeah, that's the blood of the enemy soaking the ground. Sure, let's go with that.
Man, if I were you, I would get like one of those fancy framing places, and just like get that thing just like mounted on the wall, like somewhere, because like you're thinking about it now and you're laughing, so I'm guessing every time you'd see that, you'd probably chuckle a little bit or smile to yourself and think, think good thoughts about good gaming experiences from the past, like, oh, that's how it can be, that's the goal that I'm shooting towards with my next campaign.
Yeah, I can just imagine myself handing it to them. It's just like, hey, can you frame this for me? It's like a worn up piece of printer paper, and they're wondering like, why are you spending hundreds of bucks to frame this piece of crap? It's just like, it's sentimental, I swear.
It's got a nice border, and
gold leafing around it, and like like pen, like professional engraving all over the place, and it's just this, and it's like, okay, sitting above your fireplace, your armchair where you sit in your robes, like with your wafting glass, and you're like, yes, this is my greatest possession. It's not worth jack diddly squat, but to me, it's priceless.
I remember I was going to print out the midnight setting, Arendane, the whole continent, and I remember going to several places like, oh yeah, that'll be like $100 to print that thing out on one big piece of paper. I'm like, what? I'm not going to pay pay like $100 for that. So I did like the cheap gamer way. I just took the really really big image and I just it's like, okay, that's like 8.5 by 11. So I'll print off this section and then I kind of like split it all up. And it didn't work out quite right. Like I didn't divide it right, so it just looked like hell. And I got like a big giant poster, like sort of frame, like you would get for like a movie trailer poster or something. And I just pasted the hell out of it. And I remember my players with it, like I unveiled it, right? Like I'd spent like a kind of a pathetic amount of time printing this sucker out. And putting it in there, and they just like looked at it like it was like a train wreck. It was pretty humorous. It's like, wait, that coast doesn't match up with the I see what you did there. So I think I still have that somewhere. It's probably like tucked behind some old piece of furniture in my house. But I wanted a visual aid. I wanted to be able to point to something like this is where you're at. This is where 3 weeks of travel time, and you're over here. Something like that.
Yeah, visual aids can be helpful. I find that you shouldn't spend too much time on a visual aid unless people really take to it. Like, for example, my little map thing of this very minuscule piece of land in this grand scheme of world, and people keep on thinking like, oh, how do you name your stuff and how do you come up with these things? Like, really, I just make up stuff as I go when it comes to these things. And another thing I do that people enjoy doing, because when I have like a setting or something, rather than build the whole world, make a culture for every square inch and every single squirrel on a rock eating a nut, you instead what I do is I just take take a section that they're going to be focusing on, and I say, you guys can be from here, here, or here, but you guys out here can make just about anything you want. And so they say, like, really? I'm like, yeah, sure, make whatever you want. You could name your culture and everything and build your own stuff, and it gives them a more vested interest. And I believe that's a very important thing, because we had this like guy from the north, and they battled giants constantly, and he drew a lot from Norse mythology, because he flew across the sky on a miniature dire goat with hoof, like horseshoes, or technically goat shoes, of flying. And so he'd be flying through the sky wielding a giant sword, screaming into battle from the heavens. And it just was weird. And then we had another person, he described that he was from northern Aldera, which was the area, which was like the werewolf guy. And he was found orphaned on the street, but he found out about his ancestry later on. And my wife's character, she was from this place called Karaska, and my wife is Korean, I'm Alaskan, and she kind of combined those together. And people are like, oh man, Karaska sounds like really cool. It sounds a little like fantasy based. I'm like, it's the meshing of two words. I'm sorry.
That's funny, because that's what my reaction was, like Karaska. Like that just kind of like rolls off the tongue. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, and it's like and so everyone's like, oh man, that's so cool sounding. I'm like, okay, this is what it really is. And then they're like, oh God, that's awesome and lame at the same time.
I found too with like, I've had a hard time getting players to world build. Like that's more like the GM thing usually. But I've had a few rare instances when like players really got involved in that, and I found that, like you said, if you have them build a culture that is their characters, and make a race that is what their character was born as, and that sort of thing, they have more motivation, and they can't make their character until they do those things. So like that's the best experience I've had as far as world building goes, for the most part. although I did play in a Nobilis game, which is a weird sort of diceless sort of thing, but you can make like little pocket dimensions, and that's part of the character creation. It's called chancel, and that might be the exception. Like everyone really put in like a really strong amount of effort into making this little place that we really didn't spend a lot of time in, but it was a nice little experience to work together with other people. And yeah, I have sort of like a love-hate relationship with world building because I've had so many good and bad experiences with other people. You know, it's kind of like that like group project thing in high school. Like, oh, I'm in a group project, awesome. So I'm in charge of doing everything. Is what you're telling me? You know, because like everyone else, is like, oh yeah, Tim's here, he can do it. You know, but Tim's grade is gonna suffer if it, you know, if he doesn't do all the work. but
Yeah.
but yeah, so yeah. Have you ever tried to make a world just with other people, just like to make something, or has it always been involved with like the campaign that's going to be next on the docket?
I kind of tried the whole world building as a group thing once, and it was a burning wheel game. And I did it for like, well, we only did it for a while, but it didn't really seem to take because everyone was conflicting about how they should feel about the game should go. And so in the end of it, we kind of just said, screw it. Let's just, do it like we always do. And it was a weird experiment. I mean, everyone goes to the experimentation phase of their game mastering or gaming in general. And then they just create more and more. And it does get pretty tedious when you have to do everything by yourself. So that's why I usually make a section of it. And then if people say, what's outside of the edge of the map? And I say, that's where you guys come in. And so that's where they come and put everything together. And sometimes they try to Frankenstein other things in from their previous games.
I've had interesting reactions from players sometimes when I've, you know, it's like you don't want to be pushy. You know? You don't want to be like make them do something they don't want to do, and that's kind of been my experience with world building. A lot of times they don't. They want the worlds already be there. They kind of want like a quick cheat sheet, or they just want, you know, like the traditional fantasy tropes and races because they already know what everything is. They're comfortable with that. They understand that dwarves are taciturn and beard thing, and you know, elves on trees. You know, so sometimes I found that people just don't want to play those esoteric, weird settings like Talislanta or Tecamole. You know, just because the learning curve is too much. They like you said, like a lot of people want to bring in stuff from previous campaigns, and they're like, "Wait a minute, what do you mean there's no elves? There's no dwarves? Sometimes there's no people. You know, what do you mean there's no humans? What the hell, man? It's like, what's my basic comparison in this world?" So,
yeah. I mean, if you talk about comparisons and familiarity, like if I say like, okay, Shadowrun to someone, they're going to think of a small handful and will know what that was. If I say, Anima, they often mistake with Enema, but after I explain it to them, then they kind of say that's kind of a complicated thing, and I say dragons, then they know, they have an idea what it is immediately. And if I say Star Wars or Star Trek or Flash Gordon, people have a familiarity to it, and they understand a good modicum of it. And so when people are familiar with something or they're comfortable with something, they're more readily accepting of it.
yeah, it's almost like a form of shorthand. You know, it's just like, you know, you can say two words, Star Wars, and there's like thousands of words pop into their head. Like I said, Dungeons and Dragons. You know, probably good and bad things pop into their head. You know, but when you say Sky Realms of Joron, they look at you like you're like just like, I don't know, like vomited out a frog. What the hell is that? Like, it's like, what are you talking about? I don't are you speaking English? You know what? So yeah, I tend to gravitate towards those weird type settings. I don't get a chance to run them very often, but I find the ones that I pull off the shelf or do tend to be those ones that probably no one on earth is going to play, or it's going to be very few and far between. Like at a convention, one shot, they're like, Skyrim's Jorah, what the hell's that? But I don't have anything else in that slot, so I might as well do something. Like that's I've had better luck at conventions than I have like just trying to cobble together, you know, a bunch of players to try out something new or strange or weird, you know. What do you think is the weirdest setting? I guess you already talked about your post-apocalyptic setting, but other than that, is there any like weird sort of setting that you've made or gravitate towards?
Weird setting that I gravitate towards. Hmm.
You're probably looking at your shelf, right?
Actually, I'm thinking up in my head and also looking at my shelf. To be honest, I don't really know. When it comes to like weird, you're talking like bizarre settings that make no sense, or things that in a game that I played that is odd that nobody else would play, because
maybe,
that's
maybe like non-standard, like not like you said you played Pathfinder and there's Dragons. I guess you also played World of Darkness games. So I don't know.
okay. Well, it's hmm.
If not, no big deal. I'm just weird.
I'm trying to figure out if I have ever done anything so odd. And there was a game that was that somebody ran for me in a group for a one shot. It was kind of very much like an Alice in Wonderland meets a Wrinkle in Time with a dash of Discworld in it, and it was a place where you could not make high like heads or tails of anything. And I played in it, and it was one of those things that was just too weird and too foreign and too hard to try to get used to. And it was a Pathfinder game, and the game master was a friend of mine named I'm forgetting his name off the top of my head. Jeremiah. I know him so well, but he's a great game master, and he's famous for doing the weirdest stuff that you could ever imagine. And he has like a god named like Yazark, which is literally crazy backwards. And if you say crazy around him, he literally explodes. And he's just so out there. And then he has like this. There's this world, and then there's the other world, and then there where everything's miniaturized and small, and everyone from the world that the players came from was giants to them, and it was different, very different. I cannot go into the insanities that comes from that man's minds, but I just have to say his creativity is so out there that you wonder who first became crazy or him. And
But, he sounds like a kind of a cool cat. Like, yeah, you might not be
awesome.
into every game. You might not want to sit in every game that he runs. But it sounds like even if you think it's too weird, like you said, you just marvel at the ideas that come out of his head and the worlds and crazy like surreal landscapes that he probably paints for his players.
Oh, it's like let me put something out there for you, like what he did. We one time ran across Baba Yaga's hut in the other world. Well, we go in there and we find that these children who have been kidnapped and everything, and one of the other players who was kidnapped, he was chained to the wall, and you have this hag show up in S&M leathers and putting a gimp mask on him. And so that's the kind of stuff that you can expect from him. And then there's a pit filled with bones, and at the bottom of it is this bone snake thing that when you start hitting it, it starts singing a random song. it's just that kind of stuff goes out there. I mean, his explanation of why goblins exist is because Yazark thought they were cute and wanted to have them poodle size of an orc.
I'm still kind of my mind is kind of blown, like trying to put together like some sort of sci-fi and like Alice in Wonderland, like those two things like on the Venn diagram, like don't touch. And I'm trying to picture. I'm trying to picture how you would overlap those, and like I said, that little gift with guys like doing the hand gesture, his brain just blew up. Yeah, that's what I'm doing in my head right now. So, oh wow, I'm gonna have to try something like that.
Yeah, it got pretty weird. I mean, he had unicorn chicken mounts, and it just like I don't know if he would just sit there, drop acid, eat bad shrimp, and watch a like Rocky Horror Picture Show, and then suddenly wake up the next morning and have this like lightning strike on his head, and he puts pen to paper and makes an entire epic of this thing, and it's just so insane.
I like to try to sort of like map out like the nightmares that I had, and like I just like beat up like old notebook beside my bed that I just got all this random scribbles. And when you're half asleep, you don't like always flip the page. So sometimes I'm looking at it and I have to spin it over, like, because the words are overlapping each other. And sometimes, like, even that's like, it's like, oh, I get a different idea than either one of the ideas that are overlapping each other. So that's definitely a technique that I would recommend to people out there. You try to try to flay your subconscious and try to get some ideas out of it for your games. And it's like those moments where I freak people out at the table are usually some sort of nightmare that I've had. Like, oh God, it's awful. Why would you tell me that? It's like, well, that was like last week. That was my dream. You're like, oh God, that's awful, man. I'm sorry. It's like, well, I can't control.
Yeah, that's happens to me too. I have insane dreams. I actually I described my dreams to somebody once, and they told me I have the Alice in Wonderland effect, and I see things in bright colors, vivid details, and these strange compilations that people just cannot put their minds around. And for me, it's normal, but other than that, it's like one example. I had a dream once about like flying on an airplane, and there was turbulence, and then everyone ended up in another dimension, and it got morphed into weird creatures, and it seemed like it was very normal. And so when I woke up, I told my wife the dream, and she said, like, so was this flight on like Southwest Airlines or what? So
what happened to your baggage? Was it checked or?
It's like some people worry about losing their baggage in Southwest, but other people have to worry about going through interdimensional rifts and being transformed into weird creatures.
That's great.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that goes on through my head. I appear to be normal sometimes to some people, but those who truly know who I am, they describe my insanity as a manatee, and his name is Carl. And so it's just the oddities that I can come up with are just funny, and so sometimes my creative nature gets the better of me, and it pisses my wife off. She is a saint. She is a saintly gamer wife, and like I always wondered how she could put up with my crap sometimes, because I'll be sitting there and she'll start singing to a song that she likes on the radio, and then I'll have like just suddenly make like a parody of that song, and I'll be like going along, and I can't do it right now because there's no music playing, and usually do it when I'm going along with the song, and she starts saying like, "Why are you singing this like that? You're ruining this song for me." I'm like, "I'm sorry, I can't control my craziness. I love you, babe." No.
Sorry, you said she was listening in. That's cool. Would you mind checking on the chat and see if anybody has written anything? We've had I think we got up to
we have like
seven viewers. Oh, we have? Oh, well, thanks everybody.
We have tons of people
commenting.
Now.
Yeah, would you mind going through it and just anything that pops out at you that you want to maybe talk about?
Let's see here. Well, my wife says undead Bane, ha ha ha. Well, you know what? It's my fault for giving that to you. And then things are going on. Oh, and they're already. Oh gosh, Kyle is in the chat. Oh no.
Well, you sent them a link, right? So that's cool that some of your friends are checking, what we're saying about them.
Yeah, just. Oh gosh, I am going to see some pretty weird things in my mailbox today.
Well, what's good is I think all the live stuff. Well, I don't know if it's good, but I think all the stuff that happens when it's being recorded just vanishes, which kind of sucks. Like after the video is up, but yeah, that's why I wanted to try to address it. If you see anything in there, different subscribers of mine or yours or whatever.
There's a good number of people that are in the chat. Is people I know, but I see like a few here and there that seem to be following you. So I guess it's like a 50-50 split. So yeah, that's all I can take a look at. And so hello everyone in the chat. I hope you guys are enjoying it. And if you say something and we don't get to it, then you are all wonderful people.
Yeah, well, thanks for listening, guys. Look, I don't know if you want to wrap it up in about 10 minutes. I don't know if there's any final thoughts or, like I said, anything that pops out in the chat that you can see. It's a cool topic to discuss.
Oh well, the thing is you got to remember there's the time lag, and I think it's like 30 seconds behind or something.
Yeah, I don't know. We don't have to wrap up exactly in an hour, but I figured that'd be a good. I think people start tuning out after an hour.
Yeah. It's it does get pretty interesting when when people are reacting live, and you can't see the entire thing because it would be helpful in a Google Hangout if everything was being done in the corner like in Twitch chat or something. But Google Hangout to me does have advantages, has disadvantages. For me, I usually use Curse because it's less intensive on my chat. Well, but that's when I'm playing online games. And actually, speaking of which, so when you do online games, do you like to do the mind's eye, or do you actually like to use a program like Roll20 or something?
I'm more of a theater of the mind, and one thing about playing online too is I've learned that I actually prefer audio only, which it kind of suits me with my slow internet. But I find that like even when I have Google Hangouts with the video working, that I don't really look at it all that much. I tend to look down. I don't know. I used to be really shy as a kid, so I don't know if that has something to do with it. But it's just something about the audio only, like the mental pictures that I can like paint in my head are really vivid. And sometimes I think it helps to not see the guy sitting across the table shoving potato chips in his mouth. When you're going through like very intense like role playing scenes and political intrigue and that kind of stuff. And so yeah, definitely more of a theater of the mind guy. But I have a big pile of like Rob Partha miniatures. Like so, I went through a period of time where I tended to put stuff out on the table, but more often than not, it's like 100% theater of the mind for me.
Yeah, I prefer theater of the mind, but sometimes I like to use miniatures on Battle Map as well. Sometimes when I play online games, I use a program actually called Fantasy Grounds, and you get like it does cost money to play sometimes. Like the version I had to save up for a little while. It cost me like $150, but it means that when I run a game and I'm hosting it, it doesn't mean other people have to buy it. They can just get the demo version and then they get all the access to everything. And it has ebooks attached to things that you can pin to your character sheet in the program. You can roll dice in the programs. You don't have to think of it as like a digital table rather than a like battle map system and everything.
I did play in one Roll20 game. I think it's actually it might be up on the other guy's channel, but it was like a Barbarians of Lemuria game, and it was a lot of fun. It was actually a solo game, which I was trying to think if I had that many experiences like that. I hadn't. And I think for like a Conan, Hyborian Age type of setting, that made a lot of sense. Like you're a bigger than life character that can, like smash through walls and do all kinds of crazy like athletic stuff. And he did a pretty good job too. He had various maps, and I think it was like a fog of war or like a torch feature. And so like as the character would move, like the light would like show the different hallways. And I was actually really impressed with that. It looked really cool, and it was kind of immersive. I guess it kind of like a little bit of a blending between like a video game and playing game at the same time.
Yeah. I'm talked over the chat really quick. Dune One says audio only is the best, and I agree. Well, you know what? Yes, audio is best because people often get stage fright in front of cameras, anyways. I mean, yeah.
I've also found that there's I don't know if I'm like this, but other people tend to think in the back of their head the whole time when it's a live game. Like there's people watching, so it's almost like there's another layer to the role playing and just all the normal thoughts that go through someone's head when they're playing a game. There's just that extra dimension of, well, what are the viewers going to think of this, or and I've had some people say that they like I do like having examples of my games on my channel, because sometimes I just go back through and listen to them and I cringe. There's points in the game where I just like, oh, that's an awful decision, Tim. Why the hell did you do that? or you'll hear some player like asking a question, and I just didn't hear them. I'm like, why? Oh, if I would have known that, then this would have been different. But it's a good learning experience that I find, and people find your channel too. Like I have a Lamentations of Flame Princess playlist. And I've had several people just check in with that. Like, it's kind of cool. Like, that's been up there for years. And every once I'll get a comment like, oh, man, that scene was amazing. And I'm trying to think back. Like, oh, okay, I remember that scene now,
Yeah. Yeah, I've actually seen that one a little bit of, too. Probably in, like, the earlier times before I even started putting video ups. The one game that I actually recorded audioly and put up there was a Shadow of a Staring game. And I was so nervous when I was recording it. I've completely fumbled a lot of things in the game, and like one item that they were supposed to get was the Shimmer Star, and only those who used Faith in that game could use it. But the thing I forgot about it was the backlash of the use of that item is because, like, if you use it, yeah, you can freeze the foe instantly, but at the cost of the wielder's life. And so
Oh,
I think that's the part I didn't put in the game. And like
whoops.
I killed like half the party doing that thing, and I'm like, oh man, I could have killed more.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm not like a killer GM, but I'm not afraid to sit there and kill my players because it definitely makes them more cautious. But the thing that I also do is like to kind of make an ambience for people to feel like, oh yeah, this is a reason to be fearful. Like, oh, I describe something, and like for some people, they like to describe every detail and rock and every blade of grass has its backstory as it grew from tiny seedling to when it getting closer, and it's mindset. No, I don't do that kind of crap. I often describe something and let the people, to a certain extent, let people fill it out with their minds. And I say, like, all right, Tim, you walk inside of the tavern, and there you hear the clamoring of local farmers and workmen, and you see travelers talking about what they have seen or where they've been or giving warnings to others. And you see a few merchants in the corners discussing business, and the barmaid is sitting there walking around serving the food and drinks. What do you do? And some people would go over the top describing it, but when I just told you that, I mean, you obviously visualized what the bar would look like.
yeah, I did. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
cool too. Like when it comes to description, I've gone through periods where I'm like J.R. Tolkien and I'm describing the hell out of like every single leaf, and then I've kind of like been sort of like lazy, and I think back, I could have talked about like the different senses and what they smell and hear and feel, and so I've realized there's some sort of like happy middle ground there, because if you describe too much, it's almost like you're taking that ability of the player to paint that picture in their head. Like, yes, if you give more description, they could paint a better picture, but they can also tune out. So it's almost I kind of veer towards I don't know, just describing it enough and then having them sort of fill in the details either through dialogue or their own descriptions of their character. And I try to make sure that I tell them too. It's like, please feel free to, like, I'm not going to freak out if you describe like a beer stein on the one table. That have some freedom there, create something, because I find that creative energy like gives me energy as the GM, and makes the game better. It's a collaborative, imaginary experience.
Yeah, I mean, also on top of that, if they have a question, then they can if they want to know more, they just ask you a question, and then you can give them a little more detail until they are satisfied with something. And it's like, okay, you have a question, cool. It's like, okay, simply say like, I don't know, you ask, hey, what does it look like the merchants are wearing? And then I describe them, whether they wear furs or silks or anything else, or if they have a certain accent set. And then it's like, okay, there you go. Then you sit there and figure out the next thing that you want to do, and the next, until you finally decide what you want to do in this place. It's giving enough that people can enjoy, but not overbearing them with, again, too much. It's based on preferences, and I've made lots of mistakes as a game master, and I used to try to railroad people, and I was a horrible game master at one point, and then finally I just started letting people do whatever the hell they wanted, and I just didn't care
You
as
know
long
what?
as they were having fun.
We're very hard on ourselves as GMs. We really are. Because like for instance, for me, like I didn't have an experienced GM. Let me think. Wow, till from 1991 to whenever third edition Dungeons and Dragons came out. So
I think like 97 or something.
yeah, so that's like what, like 6-7 years maybe. So all of that time, I had
Yeah.
no role model. I didn't have anyone who could teach me the ropes or whatever. It was all trial and error. And like you said, like, oh, I was a horrible game master, but like you're just learning. That's you kind of, you almost have to be in the trenches to get those awful experiences out of the way, and you can. It's like I often find that they're like, yeah, like like that experience where you want to frame your map with all the little scratch marks, and there's like a community document, like that's like the pinnacle, like that's good, you learn from that. But you also learn from that like railroady session where everyone was like rolling their eyes and like making the gag gesture. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
so
it gets like that.
you have to kind of, I don't know. I mean, I beat myself all the time, so I'm trying to be more like positive and all that happy stuff. But yeah, we really shouldn't beat ourselves up though. Like we had to learn somehow. Um, if you didn't have like a GM mentor that could take you through step by step and hold your hand, I guess it's maybe. I don't know. Like I guess in a way, that's what all these YouTube videos are kind of like. It's like, here, let me hold your hand for a while and let me tell you the horror stories from my youth, so that you don't have to relive them. But even still, I think people have to make those mistakes themselves. They have to be in the hot seat when all the players are staring at them, like, well, what's the answer to that question I just gave you? And they're like, fuck if I know. Let me think for a second. You have to think fast on your feet, and sometimes you make like this ingenious answer comes out and you blow everybody's minds, and sometimes you just say just drivel that everyone like wants to vomit on their character sheets. And you kind of have to just, I don't know. I guess it's tough. I think it's tough, but it's rewarding. So
it can be tough. I just popped into chat for a second. Doom one said again, as Darren's been able to play this for a while. Yeah, it's kind of one of those games that's fun to easy to learn and play. And then Aaron says, what's your least favorite game system and why? My least favorite game system would have to be Call of Cthulhu.
Oh, really? Interesting.
That is because bad experience, bad taste, and it is easy to be backstabbed by the entire party if they're a bunch of pricks.
I have like an irrational one. I can't even tell you why, but any game with a dice step mechanic, so like Dungeons and Crawl Classics or the Serenity RPG, even Savage World. Sorry, there's elements of Savage Worlds I really love, like the initiative and those sorts of things. But like if your skill goes up by dice, I don't know. I just can't handle it. I don't know why. Like I said, it's completely irrational. I don't know if like someone like beat me with a stick when I was playing those games or what, but I just but like Call of Cthulhu, like the system, like BRP, like I'm a huge fan of that. Like I just love how intuitive it is to teach the new players. So I don't know, have you ever played Savage Worlds or anything with like the dice step mechanics? Like I'm talking about like you can have a really crappy skill, it's a D4, or you could be like a god, it's like 3D20 or something,
Yeah, actually, I played a little bit of it. It's enjoyable. It's a simple system that it probably isn't designed much for a long-term game. To me, they're probably better off as like one shots or like a couple session game with a small plot. That's my opinion on it.
You know what? I just actually let me revise that. Yes, that's still true. Like dice step mechanics. I don't know why. Like it's like I said, I don't have a reason. It's just whatever reason. Like I roll like I like recoil in fear. But actually, I think it's probably Burning Wheel for me. Like I really wanted to love that system because I heard it's kind of like Middle Earth, and I just I tried, and I even bought like all the books, and I ended up just giving them away to friends. It's like, you know what? I just can't get into this. I wanted, I heard it was like story game Rollmaster. That's what I heard it was. I like Rollmaster, but yeah, I love the character creation system, but at the table, it wasn't for me. So I guess that's probably my final answer is Burning Wheel. Sorry, Samuel G.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's see here.
Yeah, is there anything left in the chat? We could just finish up with that.
Yeah, Doom1 asks you, Tim has been Clockwork Orange into hating dice growth system?
Clockwork. Oh, so yeah, like this Clockwork Orange scene where his eyes are like kept wide open with like metallic restraints, and they're dripping like the dropper in my eyes.
Okay. Yeah, he was asking if you were Clockwork Orange into hating those systems.
I must have been. Maybe like someone abducted me in my sleep and permitted or performed experiments on me like that. I don't know, but yeah, my subconscious
like alien probing kind of like like abduction, like you're screaming into the phone to your father to find them and kill them.
Yeah, the guys at Pinnacle must have done that. They just kidnapped me in the night, and I don't know why they would do that, but they're probably decent guys. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, it's completely irrational, and I have no reason for it. It's just it's just one of those. I don't know. Like, do you have any mechanics? Well, you said that BRP was. I guess it's from a bad gaming experience, but are there any like dice mechanics that you don't like?
Dice mechanics I don't like. Um, Actually, I don't care too much for the bucket D4 kind of bucket D6 systems. You know, like you say, like early, like West End Star Wars. I've tried that one, and it gets to the point you're literally taking like a 5 gallon bucket and just dumping it on the table and spending 5 hours calculating everything.
But you've played World of Darkness, so I guess you just switch out the D6s for D10s, or is that?
Oh, at least you know you don't go above at least 12.
That's true. I guess there's some limit there. Well, and you used to talk about playing Shadowrun. There's usually a lot of D6s in that, isn't there?
Ridiculous amount of D6s, especially when you start doing like decking or you start doing like the weird stuff that requires the very specialist skills. It's like, okay, roll, calculate. All right, do it again. C chart 1A, then move on to 3C, and then finally you refer the compendium in book whatever, and then you need to figure out on what day of the week with the solar and the moon and what kind of augments you have. And it's like, okay, can we play? I just wanted to open a jar of pickles. That's all I wanted to do.
That's funny.
Yeah, and so that's the kind of thing that I look at. I mean, Shadowrun's not a horrible game and everything else, and I don't talk about some of the most horrible games ever. Actually, I will talk about a game I've been trying to do a review on, and I got it out there once, and it had to be taken down because I just could not live with it. But I do not like Numenera. I've actually been crucified on forums because I said I do not like Numenera because it is a system that is so junky and wonky, and it's just made me cringe so bad. And it's such a subpar game. And I just, when I reviewed it once, I had to take down the review for various reasons, but I had to. When people say like, "What's wrong with the game?" and I say, "Hold on a second, let me do a very unbiased review here," and I take sticky notes and I put over the name of Monty Cook and say, "Look, okay, there we go." And it's just like that's the thing. You see, like you go out there and you say Monty Cook is a subpar writer, and just by saying that, I have just made enemies with the cult of Monty Cook, and they would probably come find me, blackback me, and I would be never heard from again. That's
I guess that's the danger
the
of
kind of stuff I look at.
having an opinion
People
online. You know, I just let's say that's the danger of having an opinion online is you're gonna make somebody mad. You know, but I just like to just make sure I phrase it right. Like, well, I don't like this game. I don't care if you do. Like, in fact, if you do, that's awesome. Whatever. I don't. You know, there's so many games out there. Like, I remember when Numenera first came out, and everyone's like very pro it. I'm like, I don't really have the need to get it. I don't know. It doesn't sound like anything that's. But you know, I have friends that are really into it. So, hey, man, you like the game? That's cool. You don't? That's cool too. I just wanted to say, you know, I guess we're at the kind of like a little bit over the time frame we talked about, but it's been a lot of fun talking to you, Darryl. Like out of the middle of nowhere, you know.
Yeah, it was out of nowhere. We'll probably have to do this again sometime, but we're going to cover one more question really quick from Happy.
Okay, cool.
Before we wrap it up, and he says, "Is there a trend in tabletop RPGs that you like? How about dislike? A trend in RPGs that I like and dislike. The RPG trend that I like is often, you know, going to friendly to everybody." But if you really get into it, you can master it, and it can get, I should rephrase it, easy to learn, hard to master kind of systems. People who like to bring games in that are easy for new players and veterans alike. So that's the kind of things I like right now. The things I dislike is the oversimplification of games that people often put out there saying that this is for everybody, but it's like kind of like baby's first D&D. That's the kind of thing I don't like.
I think for me, there's two trends that I like. One, I'm kind of like an OSR, old school Renaissance convert. I like that a lot of these systems have free versions, artless versions that people can download for free. which is very helpful if you're trying to run a game. Like even if you bought the actual physical copy with the art in it, or bought the PDF with the art in it, it's nice to be able to say, "Here's the system. There's no frills or fluff or pretty elven maids on page 37, but that's the system." And I'd like that. I think that really helps online play, because I've noticed for myself, if there's kind of a buy-in price for a game that someone's going to run online, I'm like, I just have to weigh it. It's like, do I want to play? Do I not want to play? And if there's a free version out there, it's almost a given. Like if it works with my schedule, I'll play. I guess another trend is kind of like small versions of the game. Like for instance, like High Adventure Role Playing had like a 90-page PDF that you could download for free with art. And it was very simple, like not a lot of options, but like maybe like 3 races and maybe like 4 classes or professions or something, and like 1/3 of the spells. Like everything was like a summed up, shorter version, less options, kind of like the D&D basic PDF that's out there. I believe it's still out there. It's been a while since I checked, but that's free, and it's a smaller version of the game. I guess like kind of like the basic, and then if you like that, you can go by the full advanced sort of the full system. So I guess something that I don't like. I think the focus on Kickstarter, and I mean, just saying that, like I've supported a lot of Kickstarter projects, but it gets to the point where it's like you only get this book if you in this 30-day span supported the Kickstarter. I don't know. That kind of rubs me the wrong way sometimes. And, you hear from time to time bad Kickstarters, people like taking everyone's money and going into Heedy or something, So, I don't know. So it's good that things get made that couldn't get made otherwise, but I guess it's kind of like a good and bad thing. So I guess that's the thing I dislike to some degree.
Yeah. Well, I think it's pretty much a good time to wrap things up. But I do want to thank everybody for coming in and watching and talking with us. And maybe next time, if we do this again, we could probably pay a little bit more attention to chat if there are questions, because I'm not really used to doing live streams, but I do like to make sure that I keep everyone answered and questions seen to, and interact with people, because that's the important part to me, is being able to the strength of live streaming is talking to people in person, in real time ish. But yeah,
if I had a faster internet connection, I would definitely be checking that. But I've tried it in the past; it just crashes everything. So, like I said, I'm an internet caveman, so I'm kind of glad this went as smoothly as it did. So, hopefully, it recorded well, and it'll be up on my channel. And if things work out well, we'll probably try to have another chat on Darryl's channel. Just roll it already, and I believe the link is down in the description. Probably seen it already, but do you have any final words, Darryl, before we wrap things up?
Other than saying thanks for everyone spending the time to actually come out and watch us and to give us your input. It has been great. I've had a lot of fun, and I look forward to doing this kind of stuff again.
Okay. Thanks for everybody for watching, and listen to us talk about random topics. I like these improvisational chats myself. But thanks for everybody, and we'll talk to you later.
Bye.